Hi, in this video, we'll be having a basic introduction to the PostgreSQL database. So, it's actually a free and an open source relational database management system, and it supports a large part of the SQL standards. SQL is a kind of a programming language that is used to interact with the Postgres database and is a de facto standard for most of the databases. In this course, we'll see how to create tables in a database, insert values into a database using SQL. So moving forward, it also supports ACID database transaction and is fully compliant. So what is ACID database transaction? Let me give you an idea. A transaction in a database is a very small unit of a program, and it may contain several low-level tasks. A transaction in a database system must maintain atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability, commonly known as the ACID properties, in order to ensure accuracy, completeness, and data integrity. Now, let us deep dive into what all this term means. Now, atomicity. This property states that a transaction must be treated as an atomic unit, that is, either all of its operations are executed or none. There must be no state in a database where a transaction is left partially completed. State should be defined either before the execution of the transaction or after the execution, abortion, or failure of the transaction. So that's what atomicity is. Second is consistency. The database must remain in a consistent state after any transaction. No transaction should have any adverse effect on the data residing in the database. If the database was in a consistent state before the execution of a transaction, it must remain consistent after the execution of the transaction as well. Third is isolation. In a database system where more than one transaction are being executed simultaneously and in parallel, the property of isolation states that all the transactions will be carried out and executed as if it is the only transaction in the system. No transaction will affect the existence of any other transaction. And lastly is the durability. The database should be durable enough to hold all its latest updates even if the system fails or restarts. If a transaction updates a chunk of data in a database and commits, then the database will hold the modified data. If a transaction commits but the system fails before the data could be written onto the disk, then that data will be updated once the system springs back into action. So this is the basic understanding of this relational database management system, which is PostgreSQL. We'll use this database in order to store our data. So I just thought of giving you an explanation of what a database is, and so and I've also given you the link for the documentation for this PostgreSQL. It contains a huge number of uh, popular topics like how to insert, create, execute a query, how to make a database, how to update, what are the functions associated with the database, how you can use those functions in the database. Then there are a lot of procedures, materialized views, and all those kind of things can be done with this PostgreSQL. So this is a basic introduction to the database. Now let's see how we can define the YAML file so that we can uh, deploy this PostgreSQL database into the Kubernetes cluster. So we'll start that from the next lecture onwards.